Join the discussion, guys. The link is now in the comment section. I just put it in there right now. I'm going to pin it once it's there. You guys can click on that link. It'll bring you to the studio. You can be sitting in the waiting room. You can have up to 10 people in the conversation, guys. You can have up to 10 people in the conversation. Let's talk about it. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. Looking forward to having some good dialogue. This is how we create a better industry for our entire community. It's about talking about the topics, getting that information out there, dialoguing, and creating a community. Guys, we have to do a better job of working together. If we don't have communion, if we don't have a relationship, if we don't create that rapport, there's no opportunity for us to stand together and unite and to fight all of the issues that as a community we are dealing with. You guys want to get these House Assembly bills, if you want to get these insane gun laws, if you want to get all of the issues that are falling on the people who are in the private security community to a community that's about getting together and working together. But we can't do that if we're not having constructive dialogue. Guys, again, the comment section. Go into the comment section, you will be able to find the link to join our stream today, be a part of the conversation, get on here and dialogue with your boy, a typical security guard. We'll call this the Sunday sermon, man. We're having church today. We're having church. Let's go. We'll go ahead and get some music here. Fade this out here. There we go. There we go. Hey, guys, listen, today I want to welcome you to the stream. As always, it's your boy, Atypical Security Guard, here on the Security Guard channel. This is where we help to educate, motivate, train, and inform new and willing to learn security guards. Again, we are here to have dialogue. Today, the first topic is going to be, are we in professional security? Are we first responders? I've already asked this question on the thread. A couple of you guys have voted. Some of you voting yes, some of you voting no. I'm interested to hear what your thought process is on if private security guards are first responders. Now, what's interesting is that I rarely hear anybody outside of private security say that we are not first responders, right? Work with a lot of law enforcement officers, have a ton of EMTs and fire professionals that come into and that are a part of our community, come into the location where I work regularly. Clearly, the people that are in the establishment, whether this is going to be the employees, this is going to be the contract holder themselves, this is going to be the customers, they totally look at us as first responders. I mean, clearly, we're responding to everything from petty theft to fights to overdose deaths, right? Responding to homicides, responding to robberies in progress, robberies post the situation. Everyone that's within the location, specifically where I work, the company that I service works for, everyone that's in that immediate vicinity, they view us as first responders. I started going back to school this summer, enrolled at Liberty University, and I was given a very hefty discount on my school tuition. They gave me a first responders discount. All they asked was that I submit my state law security card, and also get a letter from my employer that described what it was that I did. They wanted to know what exactly was my job role. What did it entail? What did I have to do? What did I have to respond to? And after looking over that information, they gave me the first responders discount. So it's interesting to me that when we have this conversation, a lot of times, the only people that I ever hear or see or have any interaction with where they are questioning whether or not a private security guard, specifically those who are working in an armed capacity, if they're a first responder, this doesn't even seem to be a conversation across the board. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, where you guys stand on this. You personally, if you're working in the security industry, do you consider yourself a first responder? And if you don't, why don't you? You know, for me, again, the reason why I say yes is that we're literally the first people to be contacted whenever anything happens on that location, right? You take a situation where, you know, someone is being assaulted in the parking lot, they're calling for security. If you take into consideration, you know, the potential for a mass shooting, We're going to be the first people there. Hopefully, you would respond. We're going to be the first people that are going to respond to that. Again, situations of violence or theft or of robberies, we're the ones who are responding to that. Now, if you go on Google and you ask the Google machine, what is a first responder? This is the generalized answer that you get. A first responder is an individual or member of an organized group who is among the first to arrive and provide assistance at the scene of an emergency, disaster, or significant event, right? That literally sounds exactly like my job, right? An organized group. I'm a part of a security company, right? I'm among the first to arrive and provide assistance. I've done that many, many times. I have responded to at least 4 overdose deaths in the last 3 years and 1 homicide and significant events. We've had robberies in our location. We've had, all kinds of problems. So in terms of the definition here, this definitely falls in line with security. And then in practice of what it is that we're being asked to do, that's definitely something that is right in line with private security. So the next topic that's on the docket for today is the situation in the Middle East, the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And how does that apply to private security? What are your thoughts, guys? Are you concerned about what's going on and how that could affect not just America in general, but how that could affect us in private security? It got me thinking, like, what would be some of the things that we should be mindful of as security guards? And I came up with 5 areas that if you're working in private security, you should be aware of based on the situation that's going on right now in the Middle East. And guys, listen, this thing is going to probably unfortunately, spin out of control and get into a situation where it gets much worse before it gets much better. And so for us who are working, some of the people that are on this channel, you're working in private businesses, you're working in retail locations, you're working in banks, but then a lot of people, you're working these like quasi government contracts. If you're working for G4S, you're working for Securitas, you're working for Maxent, some of these companies, you're working at federal buildings, you're doing access control, you're doing point control in government buildings. And so for those of you who are working in those situations, I think that it's really important to be very mindful of problems that could arise or issues that can come up, solely based on the conflict in the Middle East. So the first one that I would say would be increased level of threats. Now, clearly, we all are aware that this situation that's going on right now in the Middle East has raised the level of threat across the board. If you're following the information that's coming out, large metropolitan cities that are on the coast, the East Coast and the West Coast, they have increased the law enforcement presence. I was told that anyone that's working in New York, California, even here in Portland, people that are scheduled to have vacation, they've had their vacation pulled back, and they're having all of these officers come back and work in uniform patrols. So with the increased level of threats, it's really important for security officers to stay informed and to stay informed with your local government, your state government, your national government, and globally. Over the last week, from the time that the first attacks happened last weekend, I've talked to a lot of officers in various levels of security, right? So, everyone from your outdoor lot guard that's working for American Guard Services, the guys that just kind of walk the parking lot, all the way to people who are working in a more direct hands-on armed capacity. And a lot of people weren't even really aware of what was going on. And one of the things that I hear people say a lot is, well, I don't get involved in politics, and I don't see how that's going to play into any sort of issue over here. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, we don't have the ability in a situation like this. When you're talking about global terrorism, when you're talking about the potential for, what could be the start of World War III, right? If you're going to the farthest extreme of this, but just looking at the potential for terrorism, having our southern border completely open and having people that would be sympathetic or empathetic to the Muslim side of this conversation and how they might take out any sort of action against people here in the United States. Like, we don't have the ability to just be completely ignorant and aloof to things, right? So I know that everything has become political. It's been a very long and difficult and stressful 3 years. People are over it. And a lot of people, they're turning off social media, they're logging out, they're getting off the grid, they're going to work, they're taking care of their families, and they don't want to be involved or have to look or listen to a lot of the bullshit that's on social media. However, specifically for us who are working in this environment, we have to stay up to date. What can you guys do to stay up to date? Well, I would suggest going to your Google Alerts. You can download the Google app, and it's different from like your Google Chrome. Let me pull it up. If you look at my phone here, it says Google News. It's right there, that one, right? And you can actually set it up to give you specific alerts on specific topics. I know it's kind of hard to see all this, but one of my topics is law enforcement. One of my topics is politics. One of my topics is terrorism, right? So every, I want to say every like other day or every week, I get an entire email that comes from my Google News app, and it tells me like a rundown of all of the stories and topics that are on that specific topic. And then I can go into my Google News, I can pull up that specific feed, and then I can read stories that are based on whatever it is that I have set up. I highly recommend doing that and setting it up for, global terrorism, politics, maybe say Israel, Hamas, things like that, and just be aware of what's going on, because if something happens, we're going to be affected, whether it's something that happens directly at one of our locations or if it happens somewhere clear across the country. It's going to affect things like our supply chain. It's going to affect things potentially like our power grid. And just being aware of these things is important, and we don't have the ability to kind of zone out. The second thing that I would say is be aware of potential targets. Know what and where are most likely going to be affected areas. Affected areas in your direct vicinity or your state, right? Because again, if you're in a rural town in Oregon and there's a potential area for threat of violence or terrorism in Portland, directly that might not affect you, right? But down the line that might affect you. If it's a federal building, if it's a state building, and that somehow is tied to some sort of assistance or some sort of action that you need, that's going to affect you. Again, things like the supply chain, things like food routes, things like gasoline, just be aware of what some of these potential areas might be and be aware of that. And then also on a more of a national scale, how things that could potentially happen to the US government or somewhere in Washington, how that could affect you and your family, and just kind of make those provisions beforehand. Number 3 would be communication and coordination with your family and your social circle. Start talking to your family members. Hey, if something were to happen and the phone system were to go down, how would we get in touch with each other? Talk to your immediate family. If we're in our city and something were to happen and you and I couldn't get in touch with each other, where would we meet up? What would we do? How would we get from point A to point B? Where would we go if we were in a situation where something happened in our city and it was a horrible situation? Where would we go if we couldn't stay at our home? A lot of the people that are involved in the situation in the Middle East right now, they live with the threat of this type of situation happening all the time. They've grown up in it. They've been born into this situation. They are used to having sirens and all of these things going off. And even with that reality, right now, as people are being moved from point A to point B, you're seeing people just in a state of like, we don't know what to do. Okay. So have this conversation with your family and talk about what it is you would do in any various, state of situation that could happen, with anything that might be coming. Number 2 would be training and drills. It's never too late, guys. It's never too late until it's too late. Start teaching firearms handling to people that are in your family. Start teaching firearms handling to people that are in your social circles. People that maybe historically have not been positive in terms of firearms, start having that conversation. Again, I know that everything has been political over the last couple of years. We've kind of all gone our separate ways. We've gotten into our little echo chambers. We don't want to have an argument at dinner with the family, but start talking about some of these things because, guys, listen, the potential for something to happen here, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Okay. So, start talking about, the realities of what happened last weekend. And if that were to happen here or anything that's along similar lines, having people that are able to function and be able to handle a firearm. And again, I think it's time we start having these conversations with people who are outside of the 2A community, who are outside the security community, and maybe aren't necessarily, pro gun, pro firearm, but clearly, as we've seen across the board in Ukraine, and as we're seeing right now in the Middle East, when the shit hits the fan, all the politics goes out the door. Okay. Primarily and more specifically for security guards, I also think it's important for you guys to be aware of cultural sensitivity. And one way that I can see this becoming an issue kind of in the immediate future is going to be the First Amendment audit. I can see where if we are standing post at a location, and this is something that happens here in Portland a lot. So, any place that you're working might have a parent company, right? So let's just say you work for Brand X grocery store. Brand X grocery store located in Portland might be owned by a corporation that's located in Cleveland, Ohio, right? That corporation that's located in Cleveland, Ohio might be tied to money that is supportive of side A or side B of this conflict. In Portland, a situation like that will lead to groups of protesters, whether it's Antifa, whether it's, people on the other side of that equation, where they will show up to that location, be it a store, be it a bank, and they will hold a protest. And while they're holding that protest, security, clearly your job is to keep that group at bay. They're supposed to stay on public property. They should not be coming into the store or the bank or the retail establishment. They have their area where they can stand and make their protests. And this happens all the time, but they can't, encroach on certain areas of the private property. They can't, stop or impede people from going into this business. And then you as the security guard, you're being tasked with kind of playing referee. And that's where the situation will come up, where the First Amendment auditor will come up and go, hey, what are your thoughts on X, Y, and Z? Why are you supportive of this? You work for this company and this company gives money to this side. They don't give money to that side. And now you're in a situation where, your face is on YouTube and you're being asked all these questions. So I think it's a great idea to, if you don't already know what your company's policy is, I would reach out to your supervisor. Reach out to your supervisor and say, hey, if there's a situation where there's a protest or a First Amendment auditor that comes in, they're asking questions about this Middle East situation, what do you want me to say? How do we handle that? Know your property lines, right? A lot of times people that get caught up in these First Amendment audits, number one, if you're engaging with people and you don't have to, that's probably your first mistake, okay? But if you find yourself having to engage with these people, if you don't know the property line, best believe that the First Amendment auditor that's there with the camera in your face, they know your property line, right? More than likely, they know what they're able to do, what they're unable to do. They know where they can stand, where they can't stand. This becomes a situation where now you're on camera and you're looking like a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? So I would say start asking those questions. And this can go well beyond the situation that we're talking about right now. This can be just in general. Find out those property lines, find out those boundary lines, know where people can film and where they can't, understand the legalities that are behind that so that you don't find yourself in a situation where not only are you on YouTube looking like an idiot, but you're not finding yourself in a potential lawsuit down the road. Let me pull this down because I want to throw this up. So we've got a comment that just came in. Tienis Tillman, greetings, my brother. If I can help you, let me know. You can always help me, man. Why don't you jump on the stream? Give me a couple of Give me a couple thoughts on what you're thinking about what we're talking about here. Remember, guys, while we're here, while this is going on, you can tap into the stream. And when you tap into the stream, you will actually be on the screen. Your voice will be on the screen. You can get on here via video. You can just talk, or if you want, you can just post a comment here. And this is a way for me to kind of train you guys and let you know that this is something that we're going to be doing here on this channel when we're having these conversations. But again, back to the conversation. Cultural sensitivity. We've talked about the First Amendment audit. Cultural sensitivity. Be aware. And this is like, man, I could do a master class on this. Be aware of how this situation is going to be very difficult across the board, right? It should go without saying, like, whatever your opinions are on either side of the equation, having this conversation at work can be a snake pit, right? You're going to have people that you work with that you're unaware, excuse me, that are Jewish, that are Palestinian, people that have family members on either side of the equation, people that are sensitive to the conversation. I would just be very careful about having any sort of conversations about what's going on and how you feel or where you stand on it. Got a comment that just came in here. Stay vigilant. We definitely are first responders. We're the first ones on the scene most places where they're late for things that go bump in the night. And I think it's ridiculous that a lot do not recognize this as that. And again, getting off topic from what we're talking about in terms of the cultural sensitivity, excuse me, in the First Amendment audit, and getting back to the first responder conversation, this is the only people that I've ever heard say that they don't view us as first responders are security guards. I've never had anyone else outside of the security field. Never. Outside of the security field, I've never had someone be like, oh yeah, you guys aren't first responders. Like literally, getting a first responders discount on my fucking crazy ass expensive tuition. People in law enforcement, people in the EMT field, the firefighter field, they're like, fuck, dude, like you're here. You're the one that's here before we're here. Like, of course, like it's only security guards. And I think that a lot of that comes back to self-hatred and insecurity. There's just a lot of people that are very insecure, and maybe there's just a bunch of trolls out there. I don't know. Let's see what we got here. Chris Kilpatrick, I have no comment on that. I'm just here to provide my security services to the client. Great standard answer. However, the question might come up, where you're standing or where these people can stand. I think that like having a canned response and having a general response is clearly a safe bet. That doesn't always work when it becomes a situation where someone is encroaching or entering or trying to get into a certain area. Guys, everything is not black and white. And a lot of these situations with First Amendment auditors, they get dicey based on where they're trying to go or where they're trying to film. If it's just a matter of someone standing in the street and you're on property and they're not going into that area, there's not really much to be said. You can just kind of stand there, hold your ground, say, yeah, like I'm just here to provide security for the client. I'm not going to get into that conversation. A lot of times these people are pushing themselves, excuse me, into a more secure area or doing something that's baiting you into a conversation with them. We talked about this last night on the live stream, having that restraint, having that patience, not taking things personal. And that's more easily said than done because these people generally are trying to bait you, right? So I agree with you, Chris. Great answer. However, sometimes it's not that easy, right? So I would definitely say reach out to your supervisor, reach out to your company owners, talk to the contractor that you're working for, and just kind of ask these questions. You can never go wrong by being more informed. You can never go wrong by thinking about all of the aspects of how this could be an issue before it happens. Okay. So those would be my 5 things. Let's run through those real quick before I get you guys out of here. I've got a interview today with an attorney, and we're going to be talking about Measure 114 here in Oregon He actually was on the prosecution side against the state of Oregon. This was in the state trial. Many of you know that I'm a part of the federal lawsuit that's headed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. But he is going to be talking about what he saw at the state level, and we're still waiting for the Harney County judge to issue the ruling on whether or not it violates the Oregon state constitution, which clearly it does, but that doesn't seem to matter. We have to have this conversation anyway. So real quick, number 5, okay, in terms of being aware of how all of the situation in the Middle East might affect private security, be aware of cultural sensitivity. Be careful of the conversations that you're having at work, taking sides on either side of the fence on the Middle East conflict, being aware that people that you work with, around, and for are potentially going to be Jewish or Palestinian or have some sort of allegiance to either. Just be very mindful and respectful. Also be aware of potential First Amendment auditors that are trying to bait you into a situation that can get you or your company jammed up. Just be aware of that. Number 4, training and drills. Training and drills for what? Be good with your pistol. If you are an armed security officer, your job is to be a professional gunslinger. You don't want to be second in a professional gunslinging fight. Get out there and train. Also, train your family members. Listen, the protector aspect of what we do in security, it bleeds over even more so into your personal life. You are the provider, the presider, and the protector of your own flock and your own community. Take those skills as a professional gunslinger and institute them in your personal life. Start training and teaching those who are around you, and reach out to the people that have been anti 2A over the last couple of years. Readdress the conversation in the context of what has happened recently in Israel. It's very interesting that the government, whether it's the United States government, the government in Israel, government across the country in Ukraine, where they say the way to protect the people is gun control. However, once people start rolling in and creating and committing mass genocide, all of a sudden those gun laws are repealed and they start handing out AK-47s and AR-15s. So take heed and start training and working with the people that are in your direct flock. Number 3 was communication and coordination. That's with your family and your social circle. Start talking about where you are going to meet up, what you are going to do, and how you are going to get there. Should the grid go down? Should the phone system go down? Should there be any sort of major event that happens in your area and you are not in the immediate vicinity of your family members? Let everyone know how they can get together, regroup, and what you guys are going to do and where. Number 2 is awareness of potential targets. Know what and where they are most likely going to have issues and what affected areas in your direct area. Kind of start to think strategically, start to think tactically. Where most likely would someone attack if they were going to do an attack in my city, or if it were to happen here in the United States in general, and start planning accordingly to be able to respond to that. Number 1, increase the level of threats, or know about the increased level of threats. Stay informed. Read and follow the news. Get back on social media if you've unplugged. Get back into reading the news. Get on the Google machine. Start reading articles. Be informed about what's going on at your local level, your state level, and globally and nationally. Get into the conversation and know what's going on, guys. It's not okay for us to be uninformed, right? One more comment before we get out of here. Let's see here. White Fox coming on. White Fox says, big fan of your content, man. Thanks for all your wisdom about the job, dude. It is my absolute pleasure. Guys, listen, I'm just a man, okay? I'm just a regular guy like everybody else. I'm doing my absolute best to try and help push the industry forward. I'm doing my absolute best to advocate and talk about the things that I feel are important for us in the security industry, but also in the firearms community, because if we lose our 2A rights, we won't be able to do this job as armed security professionals, and vice versa. It's so important that we get involved in the conversation. Guys, as men, we cannot continue to sit by and hope that our politicians do the right thing and hope that other leaders step up and take control. We can no longer do that. It is our duty as grown-ass men to start speaking out and having these difficult conversations, People don't like it. Fuck it. It is what it is, but we have to do that. So again, guys, this has been a great conversation. I look forward to having more dialogue in the future. And guys, listen, when you do this, tap in, get on here, have the conversation, talk to me, share your thoughts. Let's create a bigger community around what we're doing, what we're trying to create. I want you guys to go out there this week. I want you to be safe. I want you to watch your six. Like always, be motherfucking great. All right?